same thing.
Yeah, supplied.
Yeah. And then I believe that you had various people come into the shop who were in bands, etc.
Well, yeah, parallel with that.
Who were looking to get something started themselves.
I can't remember the exact chronology of it because it's all a bit in the midst of time. But meanwhile, as I'd sort of come up through this sort of hippie alternative movement, my hair was down here, and I was hating hippies of how the whole scene had gone. And I did do the cliched thing. I did see the Sex Pistols a little while before the Grundy interview, and a few weeks later my hair had been cut off, and and then I met some young guys forming a punk band, and they were sort of quite alienated from society, as I felt I was, and I thought they were a suitable band to foist on the public. They had great pleasure in being obnoxious. Yes.
Yeah. So who was that?
That was they went under the name Raped, which I grimaced at then, and but they really were an incredible bunch of characters.
Yes.
And they just had something about them that
convinced
me to
bet the farm on them.
Well, it wasn't meant to be like that. But we recorded. First heard them rehearsing on a bus, and sort of helped get them some gigs.
Were you kind of managing them first, and then think, well, I better put the record out myself, kind of?
Yeah. We had no plan.
Right.
So
you basically met, sort of, well, this is what we need to do, so we'll do it. That kind of thing.
So got them a few gigs, a few more rehearsals, and recorded a single in August, I think, '77, and I think that came out either the end of that year or early the following year. And then they sort of, one of the reasons I liked them was that they were quite into the glam scene, which I'd sort of got into. Unlike a lot of my friends who sort of of my age had got into the more countrified, laid back LA scene or whatever. And they were very bright and colourful, and
Fabian was very much into the glam stuff, and
as was Sean and Paddy. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all of them were.
So you kind of would it be wrong to say you've kind of ended up with an independent record label almost by accident rather than design?
Well, I'd seen, I'd seen Skydog and other labels doing it, so it was something I was already interested in and involved in
Were you kind of thinking it was something that you wanted to do before this sort of?
Well, it was only the opportunity was only there from when other people started doing it, and there was actually some music happening, and it was a new.
And at the same time, but you're kind of. Were you making your money from the records, from the collecting kind of side of things?
Oh yes, that sort of gradually dwindled out while I spent more and more time on.
Because certainly that's quite a common theme if you talk about people like Ace and Chiswick and all those. There's that connection to selling old records, etc., and then ending up running a label in the kind of the new ethos when punk kicked in.
Yeah. Sort of. Running the band, sort of photo sessions and hiring vans and rehearsals and stuff. There wasn't any money in that, so we recorded the album. That was what we did that independently, and the idea was, could we get a major deal with it? I think this was by the time they changed their name to Cuddly Toys.
Yes, which was cuddlier.
Far cuddlier. But we didn't get a major deal, which was probably predictable. But we got a deal in Japan, and I think I talked to Ian McNay from Cherry Red about releasing the record, and he said he would release it. And then I talked to Alex and said, well...
This is Alex Howe.
Alex Howe at Wretched, and said, well, why don't... I can release it through Ian at Cherry Red, or shall we... Let's form a new label. And this was simultaneously to the time he was getting approached by various people coming up to his
right. So the people coming
stand, including...
So that's where the Fresh story starts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I'd met Alec from Family Fodder and had recorded a single with him.
Yeah.
And another one from Sean's Girlfriend and a couple of old mates as the Four Kings.
Yeah. And from that period on, I mean, Fresh grew quite quickly, didn't it? I mean, it was at a very good time in terms of independent music, because you had the arrival of the independent charts, and you know, everything opened up in terms of distribution, and lots of records were being sold. But it seemed like you got from a very small start, you got a fairly big roster reasonably quickly.
I guess we did.
Yeah.
Maybe that was part of the problem, I don't know. But it was a time when singles would sell and people weren't really interested in albums. And now the industry is in shock because people only want to buy one or two tracks.
And also, I mean, one of the things I pulled out an old Sounds interview, and I remember it was said very clearly in that one of your contacts in the majors just could not understand that you were surviving and actually prospering on selling 2,000 copies of one single.
Well, we didn't have a team of marketing people behind it. We didn't take out huge adverts. I think this is probably before videos anyway, but our expenses were low, yes.
Who did what in the Fresh setup? I mean, you were at the head of the label. Were you sort of pretty much in charge of the A&R and which acts were signed? Yeah,
but Alex certainly, you know, he would choose particular bands as well. It was his company after all. And when we got together, he was about to do 2 or 3, and I think I'd also met The Wall and had Cuddly Toys, Family Fodder in The Wall, and so suddenly we had 6 or 7 releases just in the conversation to do it, and it just was the obvious thing to do.
Yeah, and in terms of the culture, was it really one of those kind of working practically every hour God sent, you know, sort of people running around, or was it a bit more relaxed than that?
No, it was completely chaotic, and it was quite hilarious in a lot of ways. That interview with the Sounds that you've mentioned, after the interview, or was it during the interview, it all went to the pub, and then after the pub it all went back to the office, and I think we got out of there at 3:30 in the morning or something. So
it does read a bit like that. The article,
I thought it was very concise considering how.
But one of the nice things he said about you in terms of the personal dynamic was that I don't know if this is at all true, but he cited you as the diplomat in terms of the label.
Sometimes,
right. So you did do the tough talking when required.
I guess so. Yes. Yeah. I'll try.
And were your artists well behaved, or were they naughty? Did you?
How could one ever call an artist naughty? In what way?
Well, I just wondered, did you have to put your foot down at times?
No, it was all the spirit of, no, I think it was all a spirit of cooperation and collaboration, because an outlet such as Fresh and all the other indie labels that were going at the time hadn't been available 2 or 3 years beforehand. So suddenly bands were able to make a record and have an outlet.
And we're grateful for that.
And we're grateful for that, yeah. And a lot of people we deal with, and I was thinking about this, a lot of the artists we've always dealt with have been interesting characters. There's been very few that have been careerist. Yes. Whereas, and I find though you can tell when a successful artist has been very calculated and careerist and known exactly what they're doing and plays the game completely, and they're just quite boring characters, really. Yeah. And I think we've always steered clear of that sort of personality. And it also makes for
quite terse relationships as well.
We've got some terse and interesting relationships. We've had some very interesting characters on
you can share
that we've worked with over the years, and they've all been great.
They've all been wonderful people, of course.